Hey everybody, welcome to Shifty's Club. Guys, I'm going to get some updates for you for both Pokemon and the sports fans out there. Yes, I decided to go back to doing sports. um, anyway, for Pokemon fans, there won't be a case opening episode. I decided, I'm just going to open the crap, keep it to the side, like I usually do. Because there's really no need in you guys really caring about what I open. And there's no way I'm going to sit there and open a case during an episode. I know what I did last time, but you know, I'm just not up for it. I think I'm gonna do it sometime when you know, I really have a lot of time, like a whole day off, just to kind of just pick the packs open, separate them out. And besides, I'm not really big on doing a case opening again. But you guys feel different, just let me know for the next set. um, anyway, today is Tuesday, the 17th of November, um, and I just was treated to an entire day, night, morning, and afternoon, and soon will be closing night of NCAA basketball. Now, there's a lot of straight games going on. I've been watching a lot of teams determining, what their factors are, what stands out, what doesn't. So I have that to use for when I decide to put bets on them. I know what I'm going to go after when it comes down to this. So basically, that's why I hadn't gotten anything up. I was just getting ready for this. There's been a lot of bets throughout the week. Of course, the MAC conference has games on Tuesday and Wednesday, and seemingly for some reason they had one Thursday a couple weeks back. But Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm studying the MAC conference. Trying to put bets on them as it gets further along. I'm starting to more understand this MAC conference, more be able to judge judge their abilities based on past performances and use that to my advantages in betting. Um, but then again, there's also people who just want to just watch the games. They don't really care. But in other news, um, I still have no idea when the city championships are going to take place in Pokemon. I have no idea why I haven't seen it on Pokemon.com. There's literally like two city championships, and neither one of them am I going to drive to go. There's no way you're going to get me down to Statesboro for a city championship. It ain't going to happen. But on an even weirder note, in worser note, I, Shifty, am still trying to find the best deck in the standard format. Of course, in the expanded format, um, I pretty much got to go with Darkrai Eviltal. It's the only deck that has not really let me down in extended. Plus, it's got a couple ways to tech different cards in for matchups, like teching in things like Seismitoad, getting a head ringer or two in a crucial situation, um, planning super scoop ups for the Shamans instead of going directly for AZ. Um, but you guys know, Darkrai Yveltal showed very well at the regional championships in this fall. Um, and that's pretty much the only deck that I can really say for sure that I want to use. They really don't gain anything or lose anything um, from the breakthrough set. People might say, why not put in Zoroark? Well, you don't really need Zoroark. I mean, why waste all that room when you pretty much have the big basics that you need right there in your grasp? And plus, you have the regular Eviltal versus the Regice matchup, so on, so on. And those, then you get that 100 and then the Laser Bank for 30 will literally stomp Regice out of its tracks against Vileplume. And then you have Manectric Garbodor. You can pretty much just take out Garbodor altogether, and then just leave your opponent's Manectric with nothing to stall against. All they're doing is 110 damage to Darkrai, because Yveltal is really not going to be a big player in this match. What you're going to do is pretty much just target their Shamans if you can. If you can Lysander their Shaman up, because they're going to play Shaman. They have to. And I've noticed this basically against Manectric Garbodor, which seems to be sort of kind of competitive. This is when you save your VS Seekers, you get your Lysander in the discard pile, target the Shaman, get that prize lead, and then work yourself to the basically to the point of either stalling out Garbodor in the active spot without a float stone, meaning like basically trying to use your Startling Megaphone. I run one, or you have the Sarasic, which is another option. Most of the things that I'm looking at aren't really things that we should really worry too much about. And another thing that I've really looked forward to is playing against the Archie's Blastoise, in case we ever see it, because this is literally an auto win for my deck. The way I run it, it's literally an auto win. Like, basically, you're gonna put Archie for Blastoise, which then you have Articunos, which can literally be taken care of with my Yveltal alone. And it really doesn't make any sense to me why, because I could just let Yveltal EX sit on the bench and just go, "Mwah ha ha ha. My inferior is destroying you." But anyway, basically just give them 1 to 2 prize cards and then force them to make all these flips. Then you've got Keldeos, who are going to struggle really badly. And then I have another option, which is option 3. If I go first and I can get Seismitoad EX out, throw the DCE, and then shift them active, good night, buddy. And then Archie's Blastoise really can't set up if they can't play trainers on turn 1, giving you about 2 to 3 turns to get yourself really good set up and then be able to just destroy the field. So I've really got 3 different options against that deck. My main one is just let Yveltal, the regular Yveltal, just absolutely destroy that match. Keldeo EX really won't play too big of a part that much because they would have to keep switching out. And the problem with that is that they have to run through all their resources, and then I could just stall with Seismitoad if I didn't have a back counter Yveltal. So it kind of makes more sense to run the deck. In the last matchup, I really expect, but is not really a threat, if you know what I'm talking about, is pretty much any Giratina matchup. Seismitoad Giratina, Giratina Vileplume. Giratina is just absolutely the most ridiculous excuse for Pokemon, and I don't understand why people actually think that it's useful. Number 1, 180 HP EX is pretty good. I'll admit that. It's just our standard. But an ability that says that Megas cannot touch it. Okay, there's only like 1 Mega in the entire universe that is playable in our expanded format, and that is Mega Manectric. And Mega Manectric is already going to struggle against Seismitoad itself. So therefore, you really don't need Giratina in that matchup. And if you don't run Seismitoad, well, you're pretty much in shit luck. Unless you can get Vileplume out, of course. And then there's a couple more. Basically, you have your attack that prevents tool cards, stadiums, and special energies from being played. Okay, so let's go over this. If you are playing Seismitoad Giratina, which I don't consider, Giratina is not needed for the 3 reasons. a Seismitoad already blocks the tool cards from being played. Stadium cards are par to useless once your opponent plays one down unless you can counter their stadium immediately. Second one, or third one, sorry, is special energies. The only special energy that we use in this format particularly is double colorless energy. Of course, you can make the argument for mystery energy in the in decks like Gengar, Trevenant, Shaman, or Wobbuffet, Crobat. You can make that you can make that argument. But those decks are already going to absolutely destroy you because your whole point is to trainer lock your opponent. And they're already trainer locking them, and your opponent's already trainer locking you. So basically, their strategy is to play around trainer lock. So because Giratina takes so long to set up, it takes at least 2 turns, unless you're playing some kind of crappy turbo Reshiram and then throwing 2 fire and then a DC or double dragon energy, which I really don't understand why someone want to do that. Then there's always that strategy, but it really just takes too long. It's too bulky, and there's too many downsides to it if you can't get it set up. That's why you didn't see as many good appearances with it, and it took all the way till the end of regionals for anybody to even do well with it. And the only reason they did is because they played against Mega Man Garbodor decks, which were the 2 most popular decks. You get what I'm saying here? Basically, the only reason it existed was that. Ergo, back to my deck, mine is going to either set up before you get Vileplume out because you don't have the tools necessary. Because if you have the tools necessary to get it out, you've ran through your resources and have none for your Giratina on the bench when it has to come up to attack. So when I knock out that one, you've pretty much just lost that match. But anyway, and then another thing, if I'm up front with an Eviltal with doing 100, plus 20 with Muscle Band, and then having 30 for Poison, that is 150 damage. I'm already going to have that Muscle Band attached before Giratina gets his first attack off. So now you have to retreat. And there's going to be no way for you to retreat. You can't play Switch. You can't play Escape Rope. You can't play any of this stuff. So therefore, you're going to sit and rot for Poison and go away. And now you have to build up another Giratina X. If you guys get what I'm saying, basically, a 3 energy Eviltal is absolutely destroying Giratina because its lack of resources or lack of ability to play resources. So basically, Darkrai Eviltal, or Eviltal Darkrai, is basically the best deck that I could come up with in the extended format. Every deck that I've played against, I've had either a better matchup against them, or I've been able to find my resources before they could set up. And it's not about setting up before they can, it's about finding your resources in this deck, because those resources are going to allow you to set up anyway. Basically, if you could get the muscle bands attached on turn 1 against trainer locks, you're pretty good. The dark patches, maybe 1 or 2, might be able to be useful some way, somehow, but I really don't see how it would be even possible for these trainer locks to beat you if you get your resources right. Last sip of tea. But back to my original point, the standard format is kind of a toss-up for me because I really don't see any great decks. I really wanted to play Trainer Lock because of the lack of the amount of cards that we're allowed to use. So our resources are very tight. And I've been looking through all of these different all of these different decks that I could possibly make, and there's so many that really stood out as good concepts, but when I tested them out, they really could not set up on turn 1 every single game, which that's pretty much a deal breaker for me. So first off, I tried Sceptile Shaman Ariados, or Sceptile Shaman Vileplume Ariados. Basically, Your shamans help you set up the rest of the field while Skiptal gets its grass energies and muscle band attached before Vileplume comes down. So that's basically a really good concept. Poison your opponent's active Pokemon, and then with the muscle band 150 damage, and they suffer from poison 160, coming back around to 170, and then you could just end the turn for 180 or whatnot. Problem with this deck. Problem is it takes a stage 1 and a stage 2 to set up. The problem here is that the number of cards that you have to offer from your deck in order to get this strategy going. If you're giving up about, well, anywhere from 10 to 17 cards just to have that strategy give up, you're probably not going to want to stick with it. If a sixth to a third of your deck is based all around one strategy, I would just throw it out the door. It really didn't work for me. And then another one I liked was the Vileplume with Milk Tank. Now most people say, why don't you like Regice? The reason I don't like Regice is because it takes a water and 2 colorless. It takes 3 energy to set up, only does 70 damage, and stops the EXs. The problem here is that if you Trainer Lock on turn 1, your opponents aren't going to be able to set up on turn 2, giving you the ability to do a 2-shot with Miltank on an opponent's EX. Basically, 10 plus 60 is 70, plus the muscle band is 90. If you get what I'm saying, basically a 2-shot on an EX, and that's a knockout. But you got, in my deck, I tried to use Vileplume Miltank, and then originally thought, what Pokemon would be best? Should I try to do some kind of plan with Regice like normal? Articuno seems like a solid choice. And then I thought, maybe Hawlucha would be a good idea. But none of those strategies really seemed to work. So I just decided that I'd go straight up Miltank. Miltank worked really well, and it's not a Pokemon that is that takes a lot to get its attack off. And being able to do 2-shot at EX for 1 energy is absolutely amazing. So why didn't I like this deck? Well, there's several different concepts that really just destroyed this deck. Number 1, if your opponent played multiple Hex Maniacs, giving them a shot to set up an Archie's Blastoise deck, or sorry, we're in standard, sorry. I'm thinking of the extended format, sorry. I'm trying to think of the just straight up Articuno set with the Archies and Polion. Which is a deck that I did introduce to a lot of different players, was the Archies and Polion concept, and I'll talk about that in a second. But basically, Articuno could just slash Miltank for 2 prizes a piece, and with the low HP on Miltank, it would not be pretty. Then you have one of my my second favorite deck was Trevenant, Gengar, Shaman, of course. The thing I liked best about this deck, though, was that both Gengar and Shaman both could attack and get Trevenant back into the active spot. Now, this was very intriguing to me because then I could play more Shaman than Gengar and still get maybe 1 Gengar out. But Shamans could basically attack, come back to my hand, throw Trevenant back up, and still get the Trainer Lock. That way they couldn't Lysander the Shaman to be knocked out. So that was a pretty good call for me. Another one was the a really weird deck, and I introduced this to a lot of Japanese players. Sorry, guys. And this was Florges EX Vileplume. And basically, nobody even heard of this concept before until I literally unveiled it. Basically, Florges EX attacks 20 times the number of grass and fairy Pokemon in play, or on your field, and that would mean 120 if all of them were grass or fairy. But because Florges EX has it's a first attack to search for a supporter card, you could basically just search for Bridget, have and you already have a Vileplume in play. You could pull out Shamans, or you could pull out a Slurpluff line. Again, this deck just had too much bulk in the Pokemon side, and I really didn't want to use it because in order to max out Florges' second attack, you have to have a full bench. And I really don't want to have to do that unless I can get multiple Florges EX down with one Vileplume and maybe some other Pokemon. But the only one I could really come up with is Mr. Mime, and he really doesn't put anything valuable into the deck other than protecting the bench. And when you trainer like your opponent, it's really not gonna happen too much because there's not really many Pokemon that can hit the bench that well. The only one I know of is Raichu from Breakthrough, and that's really not even a worry. Then, for the last deck that was a trainer lock, was the Seismitoad Shaman and Archie's Empoleon. And then this is where it introduced Archie's Empoleon. Basically, Seismitoad hits for 30 damage and puts your opponent in an item lock. And then what happens here is that your opponents have to try to get Seismitoad either out of the active spot or discard the energy in order for them to, in order for Seismitoad to not be able to have him in a trainer lock the next turn, which is probably the most effective item lock strategy because your opponent can't really do anything about it until your next turn. If they can stop you, they can stop you from using your attack, then that's when it would be most valuable. And then you have four Seismitoad EX, 4 Shaman EX. The Shaman EX to help set up, get things smooth sailing. And then you also have Archie's in the Hole and Empoleon. Now I run 3 Empoleon. I might go down to 2, but 3 in case I prize one because I definitely want 2 Empoleon down. Now, Empoleon's ability says that each of your basic Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage to the active Pokemon. So Seismitoad is now going from 30 to 50, and with 2 of them to 70 with a Muscle Band of 90. Because we don't have Hypnotoxic Laser Verbeck City Gym, we're just going to get that 90 damage the original way with 2 Empoleon and a Muscle Band. So 90, 90, 180, knockout on the X. Pretty simple. Why didn't I like this deck? I didn't like it because Archie's in the Hole is very specific. You have to get yourself down to 1 card, and that is either Archie's in the Hole or via Seeker with an Archie's in the Hole in the discard pile. The odds of that happening in a usual situation without Ultra Ball are about 6 to 1 or 7, or 1 in 6, 1 in 7. That's what I've been able to calculate it at. Because if you cannot have another supporter in your hand unless you could discard it with Ultra Ball. Your trainers you can just basically play to fire off. That's why things like Reserve Ticket, Battle Compressor, Enhanced Hammer, Head Ringer, I have so many different things that I could just use to just fire blank cards to get the Archie's Ace in the Hole, to get them Empoleon, and then draw 5. Of course, I'm not worried about the 5 cards as much as I am getting the Empoleon out. But getting Empoleon out was a little too hectic, so I decided just not even worry about it. And that's pretty much it for my trainer lock decks. And I always thought it was the best concept in the world was the trainer lock, and I probably was right, but because it takes too long for things to set up, or it's too hectic, or it takes too many variables to set up one deck like Seismitoad, then it's really not worth it in the long run. So I decided just to not even worry about it. So I have no idea what I'm going to run. I am leaning on one deck that seems to be very interesting. I looked at this when I was working, and I seen there was a card Celebi, and it's in a 3-pack blister for the Breakthrough set. Celebi is just a little common card with 70 HP, and its ability Leap Through Time says when this Pokemon is knocked out, flip a coin of heads, shuffle this Pokemon, and all cards attached to it in your deck, and your opponent can't take any prize cards for it. So basically, when this Pokemon is knocked out, meaning it is knocked out, if you flip heads, you shuffle it and all cards attached to it back in your deck, and your opponent can't take a prize. Meaning that things like Ace Trainer, and teammates do work in this situation because the Pokemon was knocked out. The only problem is your opponent didn't take a prize. But this still knocked out, so the effect still goes into play. And then the next thing is Celebi only takes 1 grass energy to do its attack, which is put 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's Pokemon. So basically what's going to happen here is Celebi, of course we're running in 4s, is going to be paired with Meowstic. Meowstic for 1 psychic energy, I think its attack is Ear Influence or something. Basically you can move damage counters around on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. If you move them around well enough, you could take a couple of really critical prizes without giving up any huge amount of prize potential. Of course, Celebi has 70 HP, so it's going to come down to 1 hit shot and then a flip of a coin. Assuming you knock out 4 Celebi, that's pretty much going to be 2 prizes. It's going to be like 4 turns, meaning 40 damage counters on pretty much 3 Pokemon, maybe 1 with 3, 1 with 2, so we're looking at somewhere around 160 damage, which doesn't really seem to output too much. 160, 170, 180. For 4 turns to knock out an EX, that really didn't set up. And with Shaman, 2 turns to knock out 1 Shaman, I'm not really a big fan, especially against a Pokemon like that. Don't get me wrong, it sets up very well because it takes so few cards. It's so weak against so many different decks. Basically, Crobat can have a field day with this, and Wobbuffet could just try to bring up Meowstic and just target Celebes on the bench. I don't really see any other great decks. I tried Minshao, Hawlucha, Wobbuffet, and then Shamans, and obviously the Robo substitutes. Minshao's okay, it just doesn't... It's a straightforward strategy, I'll give it that. But it really doesn't have potential to go the long run in best of 3 situations because so many other decks are going to be able to literally take that one prize they need when all you're doing is bringing it back to their hand, and there's so many things that they're going to be able to do. You have red cards and judges, which are both playable. Actually, there's a lot of players who are wanting to run a combo of Judge and Octillery. I, for one, have a deck where I wanted to play it, but I decided that setup's pretty much not my bread and butter. I tried to figure out a Mega Glalie Octillery deck, and I still haven't found one that I really like as far as a very particular combination. Same thing goes for a Mega Ampharos deck I wanted to try to make with the Mega Ampharos Glalie and then the Team Magma's Hideout, where you just put 2 damage counters on everything. And then Mega Ampharos could basically just do 150, and the Pokemon already had 20 damage counters on it, so 170 knocks out Yveltal, knocks out a lot of different things, and if you need that extra damage counter, I mean, there's obviously things that you could do. Of course, we're not going to take out Mega Ampharos, the Spirit Link, just to put in a Muscle Band, because, you know, that would just be too bulky. But there's several different things that you could do in that situation. Another deck that I liked as far as a Trainer Lock, but it wasn't able to set up fast enough, and players are talking about getting all these great one-hit knockouts, is Machamp Ariados Vileplume. Now, most people say Machamp Ariados is so great. Problem there is that you are going to lose to almost every accelerative deck in the format, because if you can't find the Landorus to set up and Landorus is not able to get that set up and then able to retreat, energy switch to Machamp, pull the Pokemon you want, get the knockout, you're not going to win. Not with Machamp. Another deck that you could play, or I thought about playing, was Yveltal EX with Break Zoroark. Now this is where Break Zoroark would actually come in handy, because both the regular Zoroark with a Float Stone is kind of like a Keldeo EX, where it can just come in off the bench with its ability and then manually retreat. With a Float Stone, it retreats for nothing. And then the Break card takes 1 Darkness Energy and then can use the attack of a Pokemon, so that's pretty good. Some really nice attacks that you'd be able to use. Maybe get a nice Seismitoad knockout, or sorry, Seismitoad Trainer Lock if trying to stall Seismitoad would be a nice thing. Of course, there's several different things that you could use in that situation. And the last one I want to talk about was a deck that I originally wanted to play because of the mathematics involved in building the deck and its chances against each of the assumed metagame decks, which my assumed metagame decks weren't correct because so many people preferred all these subpar decks for some reason. And I had Aromatisse, Mega Mewtwo, Octillery with Cernius. Now, how does this really work? Well, basically, 30 damage times the number of energy attached to both active Pokemon. Aromatisse can basically just move the energy around Pokemon to Pokemon. Of course, you can just get one Mewtwo out of there, or move the energy AZ, which is runs along Force via Seeker, which is pretty cool. And I thought this is probably the best strategy I can come up with, because it literally just, once you get those first energy on, all you have to do is get the as and then have the via Seeker and just basically just bring up the Mewtwo after you switch the energy, bring it up, push up Mewtwo, Spirit Link, next turn Mega Mewtwo. And of course, you guys do understand how well this strategy works, so that's basically the strategy I had to start with. Basically because of its statistical ability to perform versus a given group of idealized metagame decks, which I turn out to be very wrong, according to what people are saying that they like. There's even people who are saying they'd rather run a Malamar deck. There's people who say they want to run just some kind of Camerupt Entei deck. There's even one person who wants to run Huntail with Mega Kyogre or Primal Kyogre. There's a lot of crappy decks just running around. I really don't feel the need to reiteraze, but probably what I'll end up going with is Mega Rayquaza. It's the only deck that really has a very solid strategy, because it loses literally nothing from what it had in the extended format. You still have Shaman, you still have a Pokemon like Zoroark, and you could run the Break, you could run the Float Stone to get the ability switching and then manual retreat. But I'm sorry to keep you guys here for 35 minutes. Just thought I'd get a lot of ideas off my chest. And then if there's still any sports people watching, then basically tonight we've got a really solid matchup. We have I'll sign back in. Let's see. They time me out for security purposes of this betonline.ag. So let's see. So basically we have two great matchups tonight. One is Toledo, who was undefeated before Northern Illinois beat them. Bowling Green, who is one of the most aggressive passing offenses in the nation. Bowling Green is favored by 7. I honestly don't think that that's high or low enough for Bowling Green. It should be a little bit lower than that. Of course, Toledo could come out and surprise me, but the only problem with that is Toledo has given up 261.1 yards per game as far as passing goes, a total of 375. That is that is just absolutely insane. You can't say that this team is actually has a great defense. The only thing that they stand on is these points per game that they're giving up at 18.8, which is probably the best in the MAC conference. Problem there is that a team like Bowling Green is going to take advantage of those yards you give them in the air, and instead, you're not going to be able to stop them because they're going to air raid it, get a couple past you for touchdowns, giving up probably about 5, maybe 6 touchdowns in the air, and then another 2 on the ground, so maybe a field goal. I don't know. But I really do expect a team like Bowling Green. Let's see, it says -7. I expect Bowling Green to win more than that. So that's a solid choice. Of course, a lot of people in the nation are, because it's a -118 versus the -102 for Toledo +7. Um, Bowling Green's favored straight up, obviously. Most people prefer the over 70 points total for both teams in the game. 31.5 for Toledo's over and under, 38.5 for Bowling Green's over and under. I would say that the safe side would be to go on the over 70 points for the total for the game, because both teams seem to like um seem to like scoring a lot of points. 34.9 for Toledo per game, 45.4 for Bowling Green. The number of total yards that they both get per game are pretty high, and the number of yards they allow are pretty high. So this is going to be probably a game that goes over 70 points. Don't hold my word for it exactly, but that should be your best bet, is the over 70 points. Ball State in Ohio. Ohio's favored 8.5. That's pretty much a neutral one right there. Of course, Ohio's favored -340 for the game. Then you have the over and under at 54. I really don't know if this is low enough. 54. I mean, Ohio really doesn't have much that they can go on, and Ball State literally doesn't have an offense. So I'm not really going to talk about this one too much. Of course, I've watched so many MAC games this year, it's not even funny, because they come on Tuesday, Wednesday nights, and there's a lot of them days that I work first, second split. So then you have the over and under for each team. Ball State has got 22.5, and Ohio's at 31.5. Of course, so many people in the nation prefer the under, and I understand that. But anyway, basically what we're looking at is there's not going to be near this many points scored. The most I could see this game going to is 20-21. That's about the most I could see this game going. But of course, I've been wrong before, but hardly ever. But anyway, I think that this game, in both of these games, the safest bet is going to be the over 70 points for both teams total for Toledo and Bowling Green. Giving the amount of points they'd like to score, based on their defense is not really holding to a lot of points. Of course, you have teams like Akron, Eastern Michigan, Kent State. These teams really can't score to begin with, so obviously your stats are going to be a little bit higher. But given the number of points that these teams like to score, it's more than likely going to go over 70 points. So that's basically what I'm looking at. But I wouldn't put that bet in until about 5:55. So the Mafia's really has got no time to do anything about it. But if you only bet like $25, they're not going to give a rat's butt. So anyway, that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. I might come back on tomorrow and give you guys give you sports fans another one for the Wednesday matchup, Western Michigan, Northern Illinois, and Central Michigan, Kent State, because I have a very, very solid one for this one. They're just literally going to give this one away. So anyway, that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe. Post any comments you have in the comment section down below. And if they're approved, I'll post them. If you have anything not related to the video, which that's pretty much almost impossible, then you can go ahead and shoot me an email at shifty14326@gmail.com. And as always, hope you guys had as much fun as I've had. I'll see you guys next time at Shifty's